Hello everyone, we are live on air with Live on Air, and welcome back to another Philosophy Thoughts episode with me, Olivia Calladine-Smith, your host. I'm a university student at the University of Bristol studying philosophy and French, and I have a passion for philosophical debate and meaningful current discussions. Now, I want to show you how you can use philosophy to tackle your everyday life problems as well as other ethical dilemmas. We will be going from discussions on social media, AI and other current affairs to crime, relationships and tips for success and growth. Live on Air is a safe space where you can contribute your controversial and uncomfortable questions so that I can discuss them and tackle them with you all. And for the students out there, you will also be gaining exclusive tips and advice to academic success. I cannot wait to discuss with you all in this judgment-free zone. You can expect to start thinking like a true philosopher. You're watching Live on Air. Hello everyone, we are back in the studio. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and if this is your first time, welcome to my channel, and if you've been here before, then welcome back. Today's topic is really hitting close to home. It's all about perfectionism and whether perfectionism is self-sabotage. I think most people would assume at first glance that perfectionism and being a perfectionist is a good thing, but there's actually so many challenges that comes with perfectionism, and I know a lot of people struggle with it and being perfectionists, and there's so much actually that negative that comes from it. As a perfectionist myself, I think this is something that people always tend to pick up in me quite quickly. People always notice, and people was like, oh, you're such a perfectionist, aren't you? And you know what? I don't know whether to take it as a compliment or not. Kind of reflecting on it, it's actually not really a compliment, but I don't think people mean wrong by it. Being a perfectionist is a double-edged sword. Perfectionism has pushed me to be able to maximize my potential because I always put more and more and more effort in until I can get to a point that I'm satisfied with as such. And essentially, I've always just wanted to, master anything I put my mind to, which is kind of what perfectionism is. However, part of being a perfectionist is beating yourself up over not being where you want to be or things not going the way you want it to go. And essentially, it's trying to have control over something that is uncontrollable. A perfectionist tries to control outcomes that actually can't be controlled. It's not realistic to be perfect. The definition of perfect itself is making something completely free from faults or defects. If you just think about that definition itself, given human limitation, it is impossible for imperfect humans to reach perfection. The word perfect, we use it a lot, but do we actually know what it means? Are we actually using it in the right sense? And the fact is, the word perfect and being a perfectionist is wanting and imagining an ideal, something that's actually unreachable, something that doesn't exist or could never exist because you'll never be able to make stuff perfect. Obviously, not being able to reach it because you can't be perfect, and then beating yourself up over it. If I start on, an example of where my so-called perfectionism has helped me achieving my goals. If I didn't care so much about having high standards and I was not so driven to be the best that I possibly can be, which is kind of what perfectionism causes you to do, then I probably wouldn't have been able to succeed in a lot of things, that I have. And one way that has been positive is, for example, with my podcast. At the start, I thought to myself, let me do this at university because I was like, I just want to do this. I want to go in there. I want to start. I want to get it out there. I went on Amazon. I bought, these tiny little mics and one tripod. And I said I would just use the one tripod, my phone and a little mic to film. And, when it came, I was ecstatic. I was really excited because I started somewhere and I was like, okay, this is good. I'm going to start filming with this. But then my perfectionism started to sink in and I was like, actually, I want this to be better. I'm not happy with this. I don't want to start it. I don't want to launch it yet because I actually want a proper mic. I want a better camera that has better quality. And you know what? I actually want my background to be better. And so what did I do? I waited some months. I saved up some money. I got to Christmas and I was really desperate to get it out by 2026. I made it my mission to do so. I managed to get all the stuff that I wanted to get and improve it to a point that I felt satisfied to launch it. So I did. This is nowhere near to what I started with. And even now, my podcast isn't perfect. I'm still in the learning process, and I'm still thinking of new ideas every single day to make my podcast better. And there's still so many things that I want to do to improve my podcast. But if I hadn't had that perfectionist mentality from the start, and I was just like, yeah, this will do, then I would have put something out that could have actually been a lot better. So I'd say that's one way that perfectionism has really been beneficial. But when I started and I filmed episode 1, I got the setup wrong. I filmed it and I looked back at it and my head was like nearly at the bottom of the camera. And I spent so long preparing. I'd done my first episode, and the last thing I wanted to do when I was just trying to get it off the ground was to have to redo the very first episode. When I got the angles wrong, and it didn't really look the way I needed it to look, I was beating myself up, and it wasn't bad to the point where I couldn't post it, because if you look at it now, you'll see that the angling is very different to that of my other episodes so far. But it wasn't to the point where I had to redo it. I was so anxious about it. And, that's where perfectionist anxiety comes in, because you try to control everything and you want everything to be perfect, and that you could have done it better. You can't beat yourself up over something that was kind of uncontrollable, because the fact is I wasn't aware when I was filming that the angling had changed even after I checked it. And so there was nothing I could do. And, my mom and everyone convinced me and said, it's not the end of the world. Don't try and be too perfect. You can get it right over time. When things first start out, not everything's perfect. I was like, yeah, but the angling is such a basic thing. And of course it is, but I'm so happy that I didn't spend too much time trying to redo that whole episode. And then at that point, I probably wouldn't have remembered some of the great things that I said from the first episode. And then I would have watched it back and I would have said, oh, but I don't like this episode now because I didn't say what I said in the first episode. So imagine then, I'm like, oh, okay, so episode 1, I prefer what I said, but episode 2, I prefer the angling. And then you just try and control everything. And then you want to create an episode 3 and you want to perfect it and perfect it and perfect it. And that's the thing with perfectionism. You can always be better. And so you shouldn't wait to be at your ultimate potential to step into something. You have to accept that you can improve as you go. And that's something that I've had to learn, that you've got to be patient with yourself, because as much as it's high standards and ambition, it's also kind of disguising self-destruction. That example shows that absolutely I'm happy that I have some sort of perfectionist mentality where I want to reach excellence, but to the point where I didn't want to launch my first episode because I didn't feel like it was how I wanted it. That's just stopping yourself from starting what you want to start. That's just holding yourself back. And you could do that forever and forever and forever. And if you're the person watching this right now and you want to start a business, you want to start doing a new hobby, you want to start playing a new sport, but you feel like you need to be in the right place, the perfect time, the perfect place, in the perfect situation with the perfect mindset. You need to have everything in the ideal condition for you to start. Then you will never start, because I'm here to tell you that actually life is imperfect and you as a human are always going to be imperfect. So it's about improving over something over time and allowing it to grow. In essentially, perfectionism actually stunts growth. But you don't even want to step into the unknown, because if you fail, you'll beat yourself up. You're not going to accept that things are not perfect. And now another example of where I'd say perfectionism kind of helped me is, like I said, reaching some goals and achievements. I think one thing about being a perfectionist is that I'll never settle when I don't achieve something that I want to achieve, and to the best of my ability. That has gone to show in both my experiences in the performing arts industry and my experiences playing football. So I auditioned for Matilda the musical in the West End for the first time when I was 7 years old. I was very young, probably was a bit premature, but I was quite ambitious at that age in terms of dance and everything. So yeah, my mum let me audition. And I remember getting through to like the second round and then being turned away. And I cried and I cried and I cried and I screamed, in fact, it's when I was still on the audition premises. And I remember all the kids leaving and I was still screaming. I went home and I remember saying to my mum, I want to audition again, because I just wasn't going to settle for the fact that I didn't get in. I just wanted to audition again. Next year came round. I was only 8 years old and my mum said, you know what, Olivia, I think you should wait one more year. And, you know, of course, I came round, I was 9 years old and I was in that audition room and I was going for it. And I really impressed that time. I think that just showed that, you know, I was very perfectionist in the sense that I screamed and cried and no other child seemed to be doing that in the corridor. So obviously I cared about it. You know, I beat myself up that I didn't get through to like whatever round that I didn't get through to. The fact that I tried again and I went back, I just wanted to get it right, which again is very perfectionist of me. That's what led to my success in the end, getting the role when I was 9 years old. And the same goes for football. You know, I started football when I was a lot later, when I was 15. I hadn't even kicked a ball in my life before that. I remember not even having a pair of football boots. I used like my Jordan shoes that I had at the time, and I was just trying to kick up the football. I was starting from just one kick up. And, you know, fast forward only 3 months and I signed for QPR, which is a JPL team. Not long after that, I then went to the Crystal Palace trials. They took me on to train because they said they saw my potential and everything. And given the fact that, you know, I'd only started less than a year prior by the time I got to Palace, and a lot of these girls had been playing football since very, very young. I mean, I was with my one-to-one coach week in, week out in order to get to the level that I wanted in football. The fact that I was playing JPL within 3 months of kicking a football, it just showed like the perfectionism, you know, going every week. I wasn't going to settle to just be like rubbish at football. Like I wanted to be like decent at it and be good, that people would watch me and be like, oh, she's good. And I'd go to training every week, no matter the weather. And it was that kind of gave me that breakthrough. But without that perfectionism, without wanting to just be better and better and better, I wouldn't have been able to achieve getting into those clubs and things like that. However, perfectionism has shown up quite negatively in my football as well. And I'd say that's when I didn't realize how early I was to football. I had to be quite patient with myself sometimes, but I wasn't. Or if I got in a match and I did something wrong, I would beat myself up to the point where I would just lose my head for the rest of the game, not want to play anymore. Quite a negative mentality. That's where perfectionism manifested itself in the wrong way. I wanted to be in control of the game and how I played, and every move that I made, I wanted to be in control of, not realizing that, you know, football is inherently a unpredictable game. It's not something you can really control. I would beat myself up all the time, and I still do it to this day, especially when I go back now to football training. And I don't think I'm as bad as I think, but because I want to be perfect and I have those high standards for myself, if it's not where I want it to be, I like zone out, or I just stop putting the effort because I'm like, well, there's no point. I'm not where I used to be, or I'm not how I want to be. So I'm not even going to bother anymore. And that's where perfectionism becomes really negative, because it actually invites procrastination. Being a perfectionist means that sometimes you want to wait until things are perfect, like I said, that you actually procrastinate even starting, or procrastinate taking action. And I think that's just the fear of feeling or being seen as imperfect, either by yourself or other people. For example, I did the same thing with my A-levels. I'd have revision to do and I'd plan out my day, and say like my day started off imperfectly. I had like something get in the way, or, you know, I wake up late. I would literally call off the whole day of revision. Now, obviously not like nearer my exams, but I remember doing this a lot during year 12 and 13, and just in my studies in general, just wanting to make sure that my day and my revision goes exactly how it is. And if I didn't get as much done as I wanted to, I would beat myself up and not be appreciative of what I did do that day, and that I actually have a limitation. Like sometimes I would set too much for myself and have like such unrealistic goals for my revision, and I wouldn't get as much done as I wanted to, and I would just beat myself up. I'd have anxiety, like it would distract me even the next day. Oh, I didn't do this yesterday, I didn't do that the week before. When you get to that stage, like I said, it's just self-destruction. Like I said, if you've got that dream, if you've got that hobby, anything that you want to do, just take action. Allow it to be a growing process that you're patient with. Allow yourself to make small efforts and take one step and crawl before you run. And if you think about it in like a visual way, perfectionism is like trying to reach the top of the ladder before you've actually stepped each step to get to the top. So if you want to just jump to the top level, you can't do that. You have to take the steps. And if you don't want to take the steps, you're not going to get to the top level. And so you'll just sit at the bottom and you'll just procrastinate, because you'll keep holding on to the fact that you want to be at the top. You just want to do it in one step and you don't want to take those little steps. So you'll never get there. You need to redefine perfectionism. Is what you're looking for excellence, not perfectionism? We are now heading in the right direction. Something can always be improved. So if you just do your best and then you find a flaw, then improve it, and then find another flaw and then improve it. And through that, you can get closer and closer to perfection, so-called perfection, or you can just reach excellence with that thing. Now, the last way perfectionism has impacted me has been learning a language, especially in A-level. This is how I started to realize the flaws in being a perfectionist. You have to be prepared to make mistakes when you're learning a language. As much as perfectionism set like that high standard to want to speak French well and to do well at the subject, it actually kept me stagnant for a really long period of time. It actually gave me mental blocks. And what I mean by that is I never wanted to make a mistake when I was speaking French. If I tried to like make every single word in French come out my mouth perfectly, I wouldn't have been able to speak. If you just try and like stop after every word and be like, okay, I need to make sure that's perfect, you've already made it imperfect because you've stopped mid-sentence to check whether it's perfect, which makes the sentence imperfect. Sometimes learning a language, you don't even have a reason why things are a certain way. So sometimes you can't even verify in your head. Moral of the story, I spent so long in year 12 and year 13 going to my speaking sessions and just shying away. I had a mental block. I would actually underperform because I felt too embarrassed. And the minute I decided I'm just going to start speaking and I'm not going to think about the mistakes that I make, that's when it clicked. In the end, in my speaking, I got 99%. And that was simply from just letting go of the perfection. And that's where, being a perfectionist hasn't helped me, and letting go of it has allowed me to actually excel. It is self-sabotage, because if you don't get perfection from the outset, you just retract from the idea altogether. Know that it's not going to be perfect at the beginning, but you have time to improve it. You have to give yourself the grace. You have to give yourself time to grow, because you're not going to just reach perfection from the outset. And you know what? It comes across as even laziness. And I'll tell you one way I think perfectionism is also so interesting, and the way it infiltrates into your life is within relationships. Being a perfectionist in the sense that some people feel like they're not even ready to get into relationships or commit to people because they feel like it's not the perfect place at the perfect time, and they want everything, the situation, to be perfect. And relationships are one of those things that aren't perfect, and trying to be perfect before you enter a relationship is unrealistic. You don't deprive yourself of things that you want because you feel like you need to get to the perfect situation, because the perfect situation is not going to come. This is not me saying to move hastily and be with someone that you don't want to be with, but if the timing, if the person's right and you want to be in a relationship with that person and you know how to navigate it alongside your life and stuff like that, then don't see yourself as an imperfection and think, oh, hold on, but I need to make myself completely perfect. I need to be in the perfect financial situation. I need to be the perfect mental state. I need to have the perfect house. I need to have the perfect clothes. I need to have the perfect look. The list could go on forever in terms of finding perfection before like being in a relationship and things like that. And I'll tell you what's really interesting, and the way it can also manifest itself. Being a perfectionist to the point where you try to control other people's actions, because something a lot of perfectionists do is they want every situation to be perfect. And part of that means being very strategical about the way they interact with people in order to get the responses and kind of the interactions that they want. You end up shrinking yourself because you're treading on eggshells. If you are trying to make a relationship with a friend, with a partner, whoever, if you're trying to make that relationship perfect and you don't want any imperfections within that relationship, you will tread on eggshells. When they're interacting with people, they don't want to upset anyone. They don't want to meet any conflict, and they constantly like self-sabotage and even like step away from certain relationships if they envision something going wrong, because they don't want to have to face something going wrong. That is part of being a perfectionist, and I think that's just fear disguised. It's just self-sabotage, and that's why you hear a lot of the time people saying they self-sabotage within relationships, because people are too scared to fail or mess up, so they'd rather just not step there in the first place. One of the things that a philosopher Aristotle said is virtue is balance and is what creates human flourishing. So as with anything, you just need to find the middle ground. Don't try to put too little effort, because that's laziness, and don't try to overly perfect something, because that's self-destruction. My conclusion is we should redefine the word perfectionism and swap that in for excellence. So excellence or perfectionism should be something that motivates action, because you want to do better. You don't just want to settle for less. You want to have ambition, you want to have high standards, and as such you want to reach excellence. So anything that you put your mind to, you want to be really good at. But at the same time, it is one that accepts mistakes. So once you've taken that action, you're allowed to make mistakes and still keep going. Not hyperfixate on perfectionism so much that you fail once, and then you bow down because you've just made one mistake. No. Accept that there's going to be imperfections. Don't attach yourself and your identity to perfectionism and performance, and see them as learning curves, ways to improve, things to help you to actually reach excellence. You could beat yourself up for a minute or so, but then shift your mindset and literally say to yourself, okay, what can I learn from this? Perfectionism is not delaying starting. I want to get this so right. I'm trying to make this perfect. No. You're not trying to make it perfect. Now you're just trying to back down from the idea altogether. Perfectionism is not burnout. Part of being perfectionist is always wanting things to be prim and proper. You just keep going and keep going and keep going, and you almost don't give yourself a break, both mentally, because you're constantly going back and forth with yourself. Oh, I did that, but I didn't do that. Okay, now let me fix that. But I didn't do that, so I need to fix that. You're always going to be able to find something to improve. You're not giving yourself that grace, then you will burn out, because you can't have it perfect. Just allow yourself to grow progressively. Don't burn yourself out. Don't attach the way you feel to your performance all the time. If you don't show up the way you want to show up for yourself on one day, or you have off seasons, don't let that tear you down completely. Don't let them infiltrate into other parts of your life and just make you procrastinate in all areas of your life. If one thing goes wrong in one box, just put the lid on the box and just leave it there, because you do not want your feeling of inadequacy or failure or imperfection in one area of your life affect better areas of your life. Still be the best person that you want to be and have high values and high standards, but also not drag yourself back and self-sabotage. But yeah, that is everything for today. I really, really enjoyed this discussion. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and follow me on my other social media platforms at liv.on.air on Instagram and TikTok. And you can also find me on Spotify at LivOnAir, where you can listen to the audio versions if you're on the go. And also, guys, be sure to comment down below if you have any video suggestions, because I really want to discuss things that people want to hear, people are interested about, people want me to kind of navigate in a different way, maybe my opinion on something. So yeah, definitely put anything in the comments below. But that is everything for today. It's Live On Air. Goodbye.